All right. And they're off and running. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do tonight is going to have a little bit of a truncated program because, as I mentioned to most folks who were in at the beginning, unfortunately, Jeff English won't be able to join us tonight, so we won't get his presentation on that 1970 College World Series program that he purchased a couple months ago. The connection there, which I didn't mention, but that most of us know, is that he has our chapter member, Jeff English, God bless his heart.
We're getting some interference.
We're getting background. That background.
Somebody got.
I think if you put it all on mute, it cuts that down a little bit while you're speaking.
Whoever has that in the background, if they just put it on mute, then they talk when they unmute.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Somebody's got a program on or something.
And Matt, I have a question too. Do we have a new person or two on here that hasn't been?
Yep, I'll get to that. I'm getting to that.
Okay, good.
Yep, we got several new people joining us.
Good.
But Jeff won't be one of those joining us tonight. I mentioned he's got work-related concerns, and he is also not going to be able to do his presentation tonight. We'll roll that over to next time. So let me introduce the new folks. We've got a couple of people who are from other chapters joining us. We all know, most of us anyways, know Sam Zigner from the South Florida chapter. He's in the meeting tonight. Our chapter president from down there. He joined us a couple months ago and has been gracious enough to come back once again. Not sure why, but he did. Welcome, Sam, as always.
Welcome, thank you.
Couple of other folks joining us, a couple of erstwhile chapter members. Nick Gandy has joined us, as has Billy Morin, folks who've been with us in the past for socials,
Hey, good.
and who've been on the email list for this chapter forever, and are kind enough to join us tonight. And then Charlie Slavic from the Northeast Florida Jacksonville chapter. I'll be giving a little blurb about that, attending a couple of their meetings in a few minutes, and let Charlie certainly chime in to tell us a little bit about the efforts of their chapter and its nascent stages. And let me
He's muted.
What's that?
He's muted, and so is Lori.
Okay.
And so is Mick.
Yep.
Yeah, they can stay muted until they talk.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yep. Which means I can also mute you, Fred.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Shut my mouth. Trying to be helpful.
Power.
No, that's all right. That's all right. That's okay. No, I appreciate it. But yeah, it's an easy enough thing for an individual to control. I've given everybody the carte blanche to do that. Video, audio, what have you. And let me make sure I'm not missing anybody else, because the rest of us, unfortunately, are just long-time returners. We got nothing better to do, right?
Really.
So anyways, I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting and call her to order. So how's everybody faring these days? How are we doing?
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Good.
I've been sorting baseball cards. I never had time to do it before, but now I got plenty of time. So that's why we got this presentation. I've had the time to do stuff I've been wanting to do for about 15 years. So.
Matt,
Yeah.
this is Brent. Matt,
Yeah.
I suspect you feel that, and I know we all do, but that Minneapolis thing has really been a lot to deal with on top of everything else. It's just so sad.
Yeah, it is. It is a sad situation all the way around, and it is not a small situation by any means. It's not isolated to just Minneapolis. It's not isolated just to Tallahassee. It's not isolated to Miami.
Yeah, it's become worldwide.
Yeah, it is a very tough thing. It is not an easy thing, and matters like that often are not.
Especially when, this is going to sound trivial, and I don't mean it to, but when you got the pandemic going on, you got all this stuff going on, and you don't have baseball going on. I think I can say this. I don't want to be sacrilegious here, but boy, do I ever miss the box scores and just, the day-to-day, what baseball brings to our lives, I guess what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to compare it all to the other things.
Useful distraction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's contextualizing a very nice, very sorely missed distraction that is a part of all of our lives to a greater or lesser extent. We wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't the case.
Yeah, right.
Hey Brent, today on MLB.com, I watched I don't know what you would call it, some sort of dream matchup game between the 1986 Mets and 1975 Cincinnati Reds. Apparently they have a bracket and they're down to the finals. It's really kind of weird.
Wow. Well, if Gooden was pitching, the Reds were in trouble.
It was Dwight Gooden and Jack Bellingham.
Oh my.
I watched 2 innings of it and said, this is really strange. I can't take it.
Yeah, they're dream matchups. They're dream brackets that they've been running for. This is like their second round. These are like the dream teams as opposed to like the dream lineups for the different organizations.
Is that a photo behind Turner, or is he somewhere?
No, that's a photo. That's a photo.
I'm not in Dodger Town.
I couldn't tell for sure what it was, Jim.
Yeah.
Matt, I just want to say, we had Jeff Lixon on here earlier. I don't know where he's at, but he's
Really? Let me see if I did not see him show up in my queue. I was watching it for the.
pretty sure he was here. Maybe not. But
Yeah,
I saw him earlier.
he hasn't pinged me via email to say he's not getting in. And I don't know notification via text, so.
Never mind.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I'm going to appoint you the gatekeeper here in a second.
Hey,
Station you at the front
I'm
door.
having
You get
a
to.
little adult beverage. Don't appoint me to anything.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna put you out in front in the door there. You're gonna check IDs and make sure everyone's of age. All right, folks. We'll get going here. We have. Whoop! Somebody's got a phone call. We have kind of a shortened agenda, as I mentioned. What's the latest folks have been hearing and seeing about the possibility of a 2020 Major League Baseball season? Anything to share with the group?
They're in pretty crunch time negotiation right now, but they're still, slamming, what on the table against each other. But the owners rejected the 114 game plan, which the players wanted because they get paid for 114 over 162 pro rata salary. The owners countered with, since they can set the schedule, they said, we're losing money each game, so we'll play 50 and then go for the playoff, and which is the big money in the television contract. So we'll just do a 50 game. I think that somewhat delegitimizes the season if you don't do at least 81. I think it was half a season plus 1. 82 was the original. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that the 114 and the 50 comes out right straddling in 82 games. Yeah. So I think they're going to, money talks eventually, and they'll get together and I think do at least 82 games. So it's somewhat accepted as a legitimate season, and then an expanded playoffs. And there's too much money to share that. I don't know why the players didn't grab on the 50-50 thing and if anything say, yeah, but we want this going forward, because they just spent the last 5 to 7 years complaining about how their share of the pie went from 48 or 49 at the beginning of the contract down to 42. And I talked to some ex-union people who said Marvin Miller would have never agreed to some of the stuff that Tony Clark and whoever's in charge of negotiations now, that they got hoodwinked. And they call each one a salary cap. Well, what they have now was a salary cap Trojan horse that came in. They called it something else, didn't realize it was a salary cap, and only recently, the last year or two, said what they have now is a salary cap, and it is. It's a de facto salary cap. Mm-hmm. And so what they should have been doing is, I couldn't believe when the owner said, we'll give you like a 51-49 split of the revenues. And I know they can verify the revenues. They're always concerned about the owners will then gain the revenues. But that's what saved the NBA, is they became virtual partners and they grew the game together. And that's nothing of there's an unlimited amount that the players can make under that arrangement. If revenues grow, the pie grows for everybody. And I was so surprised that they A, rejected that, and B, called that a salary cap, which it's not. What they have now is a salary cap, which is a noose around their neck, is strangling them. They've complained about it for years.
Yeah.
Isn't part of the issue there, though, that and how would this be resolved? That the owners have always refused to open the books, and without that agreement as part of it, how would they know?
Well, stuff is
total.
public, but you would write it in that, and a lot of them have partial ownerships in the broadcasting companies. Like the Giants flagship station is a part owner of the Giants and vice versa. So yeah, they're embedded. But you could, I mean, a Marvin Miller would say, well, it'd be whatever you negotiate and publicize, or a comparable to another sport. Because you can't, nowadays, you can't say, well, look at this, we just signed a $500,000 TV contract over the next 10 years with a TV station to broadcast our games for the next 10 years. And everyone would say, wait a minute, the Marlins get this much and the Yankees get this much. And there's too many comparables out there. And other sports are comparable in such a way that you could say, no, that doesn't even pass the smell test. So you would say either what you report or what's on the books. And a lot of the broadcast companies are public companies. That's where they get some of the information, the true information about what the contracts are. Because yeah, the owners say, well, you can't see our books, but the broadcast companies are public companies, and the Braves, I think, report exactly what the arrangement is with the team or the Braves broadcaster, because they're public companies.
Yeah.
So there's ways around it. Yeah, I know there's a suspicion and a mistrust between the two, but there's ways to get around that.
I think the public relations part of this thing is awfully damaging to baseball too. They have the opportunity to be the only show in town for months. And I mean, my God, what better situation is there? There's nothing else to watch. And,
Every day. Yep.
It would seem to me too that if they don't have baseball, that there's a big risk that there'll be a loss of interest in baseball if they screw this up and decide not to have a season.
It comes 1994 all over again.
Exactly. It's exactly like a strike.
And there's no Sosa McGuire in the wings that we could be sure of.
No Ripken, no great white, no great white hope riding in on that stallion to save the game.
Well, the owners know in the back pocket they could recover by just expanding up to 32, which they want to do, and ringing the cash register then. Any losses they take on this year, they're going to make up in the next 2 years.
But do they expand before they take care of things like Tampa and Miami and some of the franchises that are just...
They'd like to, but now Corona, maybe the COVID might change everything, might accelerate that. But yeah, in a perfect world, that's exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, no, they'll chase whatever they need to in order to make up the.
They're not living in a perfect world anymore, unfortunately.
Nope.
Right.
I'd just like to say the Marlins would be successful under the COVID virus regulations because they're social distancing at every game anyway. So.
Yeah, really.
All right, who said that? I got to know who said that. I didn't. That was
That would be
great.
the South Florida chapter president.
Well, that was a great comment.
Touche.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
and
pretty
it's a great ballpark. I've
gorgeous.
been there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it should be down by the bay in my opinion, but it's still a great ballpark.
Yeah, the real estate's a little more expensive there than it was at the Orange Bowl. So.
But it'd have that feel of the Giants Stadium.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, if it's on
absolutely.
the
Being
water.
on the water, man. Those of us who went to SABR 48, they can attest to how cool it was to have PNC right there on the Allegheny, right at the confluence. I mean, it's a great setting, and the water really.
Yes, it is.
So. Okay, very good. All right, well, let me do a quick spiel on the attending the SABR Jacksonville, Northeast Florida chapter meetings. And I'll turn it over to Charlie and let him kind of do a follow-up on that specific to the efforts of that chapter, just generally speaking, future plans, and then in particular, I'd like to talk about the pursuit of naming the chapter for a particular well-known individual in that part of the state.
I can't go with jumbo shrimp.
It was under consideration. It was on the list, on the short list. Well, we're still.
That was,
basically we're still in the, gee, what do we do with this new toy, thing, because we were born of the lockdown, basically. I was so bored, I had nothing to do, and just saw, how easy SABR seemed to make it seem to start a chapter, and I just sent it in there, didn't really have any expectations. They come back and say, yeah, you got it. And so the 5 or 8 people that we started, it was 8, I think, you needed
Wow.
5 minimum. And some other people joined shortly after from other chapters, was, we would get together and say, okay, how do we do this? And thank God for Zoom. I think it was so great, because even though we could have met, and we have our first meeting in person scheduled for the 10th at a restaurant, local restaurant, we've been engaged in all that stuff, that arcane stuff, like the pouring the foundation and, setting up the drywall and wiring the house and making sure the infrastructure is in place. But we've been doing some fun things, which we said the first and most important thing was the naming rights. And I looked at you guys and I said, you have a great Buck O'Neill. I mean,
Yeah.
I said, we have to get somebody like that, a great player. So we were going over people with an attachment to Jacksonville. And unfortunately, the list was very small. No, it was like Chipper Jones, some guys I didn't know were attached to Jacksonville. Bill Terry came up.
Big beard dealer, yeah.
Some of the guys that passed through minor league, a list of Hall of Famers, Seaver, Negro, Wilhelm, all that, that were still available. And then I think Matt was in one of the first meetings and said, you probably want to make sure you get permission. And one of our members mentioned that Leslie Heafy had told us that for living persons, you would want to do that. But one of the two, I think it was Matt, it might have been Glenn Guzzo, said, well, maybe for, deceased persons too, just in case there's a brand or heirs that are attached somewhat to residuals from their playing career, that sort, especially Hall of Fame types. So we were considering Hall of Famers across the board. We would love to have gotten Chipper Jones because he played in Jacksonville, but why would he do it? And maybe have us tarnish his brand. And with living players, there's always the risk that they do something controversial and tarnish, your chapter. So we were just batting names around, and I had put together a list of Negro Leaguers, and we found out that Pop Lloyd, John Henry Pop Lloyd, born in Palatka, moved to Jacksonville shortly thereafter, was discovered on the sandlots, as they say, of, I still haven't nailed down what parks he played in, but I think it'd be Durkee Field or JP Small, where he played. So I mentioned that, and he had a long and distinguished career. He's in the he's in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He was one of the 16 or 18 that were brought in from the Negro Leagues. And so we were trying to find, I was trying to find a guy. We all kind of said, well, whoever we champion the most, we would try to find a contact and get approval and bring a list of 3 approved names first, rather than just, say, hey, we'd love to have Chipper Jones, and then find out that we wouldn't get approval. So I was doing, in addition to Chipper, Pop Lloyd. And I couldn't get anyone that would respond, that had a marginal attachment to Chipper. But and I was even having trouble with the couple that I had, which were in New Jersey, where he eventually played a lot of his ball and settled and died and was buried up in Atlantic City. But Matt was in the other meeting, and after we had a truncated meeting because we hit the 40-minute limit. We were originally going an hour. We were doing some other things. I mentioned the frustration I was having and not getting a response, and I was almost ready to give up. I said, I'd rather have like a no answer than, no, you can't do it, rather than no answer, meaning dead air, coming back. After the meeting, Matt said, hey, do you know Wes, our member, he wrote the book? And it embarrassed me because I had the book for, the right time. And I was going through it, and I said, well, it has the 2 names. And I remember thinking, well, I'll go through it one last time, but I was, just going to go see if there was a contact I missed in there or something that maybe would give me an answer. And Matt said, well, I'll put you in contact with our guy. And he mentioned the background and the frustrations and whatnot. And Wes just jumped right in, like exactly the way Matt and, Charles with the meetings, even from afar, he sent me a nice email of encouragement and advice, and we've been using it. And Matt at the meetings, it's been like God said, well, we do that, because a lot of times I go, well, what do you guys do? You know, I'm cheating. I want the crib notes. So, you know, what were you doing in early stages?
We make it up as we go along. There's no magic there.
Literally,
Yeah,
Wes
man.
was like within a day, he took, you know, and he didn't sit on it. He's like, you know, I have calls out to Phil Dixon, who's a big time Negro League historian and researcher, and Larry Lester, who's with SABR, the Negro League Committee. And he said, if they have any other contacts that I don't, he says, but the contacts I have are deceased. He had no wife and children, which the law, I think, really only grants rights to, in Florida, to spouse and children, immediate children, can inherit and take on the, you know, it's not like nieces and nephews could come in and cousins and whatnot, a claim. So we were confident, and Wes said, well, he's in the public domain now, so I don't think anyone would have a problem. So I was kind of heartened by that. But Phil Dixon came back, said, well, no, he doesn't have any contacts of that nature that could give approval. So it sounds like a year ago. And then Larry Lester came in, not only that, said, here's one or two others you might want to check from like gravesite.com, which I did. But one guy's from North Carolina. I think they're just people that were fans that come in and you can plant virtual flowers on the gravesite. And he said, you might want to try these. I don't know of any, but I think it's a great idea to name the group after this. So, you know, taking all, you know, those, I feel like that's enough due diligence that we're going to send it up to SABR and see if they have any, and if they don't, which Larry Lester's, you know, I think on the board there. So if he doesn't have any problem with it, I think we'll get a go on that. We're pretty excited about that. And then I just have to make sure all our members, but it sounds like they're going to go with the name we get approved. I just think it's going to open so many doors for what we want to do as far as outreach to, you know, like schools, college kid, 3 at least in the area, UNF where I'm from, Flagler on the south side, down in St. Augustine, and Edward Waters, which also has a sport management program there. The kids that would be interested in some of the things that we do as far as research and statistics. I just finished up at UNF and I worked in the study hall, and I had a lot of the baseball players and basketball players and just like asking for help on projects and things like that. And I think, you know, we could fill like a mentoring role or mentoring as far as, you know, standing side by side with them and doing projects that would interest them. If it's statistics or most of them are sport management, but some of them took statistics or computer science or some business applications. Well, here, you could do a business presentation on a sports team if that's where your interest is, and you'll learn the business matter of it, you know, but you'll do something you know and something you like, and you'll like the research and get them engaged like that. And so we're going to approach them as partners I already have with UNF, but we would like to go to Edward Waters and Flagler and see if, you know, we could serve some sort of role and get some kids jazzed up about a group like SABR that, you know, unfortunately that, and they know it and we know it, you know, is skewed a little, you know, to the 50 plus side at
50.
Is it greater than that? Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
Just take a look at the
Captain,
Brady
what do you think
Bunch-esque
about that?
layout here, and you'll see. Yeah.
So I think there'd be
gee,
some
I don't
interest.
know.
I think there'd be some interest, and you know, we're going to find out. Like I said, I'd rather get an NO answer than, you know, than to not have any answer on that. I'm interested to see what the interest would be. We put together, or I put together, I always say we because it's our group, a mock draft that I think kids would be interested in, and put it out on our Twitter site, and just to see mainly if the kids would interest, because I don't think any of our other members, one has a Twitter account, so I don't think they know that but I've reported it to them. And I'm afraid now that I get more than 100 or more entries, but I have it automated into Excel. And it's something we could do as a presentation. I interviewed a kid that I just found on the internet, Nick Fickner, from this new site called Launch Angle. He's sending things out. And he's a graduate from Endicott College, and he heard about us and started jamming my the SABR site with his stuff, and I thought, why is he sending me this stuff? What is he trying to sell? And I would compliment him on one, and he would compliment some of the stuff I sent. And I said, we should do an interview. And he's like, sure. And I'm like, really? That easy? I just threw it out there because I'm in that stage where I'm trying to, build relationships for us and build a, little portfolio of things that we can show other people. This is what we think we could do at your school and for your students. And it was a great interview. The kid's a, pretty good speaker, knows where he's going, what direction he's going. I thought he was going to be in the baseball operations, looking for a job in Major League Baseball, but he's determined to do the blog or the website and podcasts and go that multimedia route, and maybe be involved in journalism somewhere. But Endicott College in Massachusetts, pretty good college. So he's got to get his money's worth somehow. He's got to pay some bills, I'll bet.
Yeah.
But it's been fun just doing all this stuff, which seems like just building the infrastructure type stuff, but it's been really fun so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charles, is Jacksonville your hometown? Is that where you're from?
No, not with this accent. I was born and raised in New Jersey. I was born in the Bronx, raised in New Jersey.
Oh my God, another Yankee fan?
No.
Oh,
my dad was a Willie Mays fan, so I was
I am
Giant
too.
fan. Yeah, so I was San Francisco. Yeah. He stayed with them when they moved. He was a diehard.
Willie's catch at the Polo Grounds in the '54 series was on my 9th birthday. He's my favorite player too.
I have a picture of it, of sort of a diagram of it. I wish I could show.
Nice.
I probably could if I took the camera off. But yeah, that's where I started. And then we came down to Tampa. We lived in Tampa for 10 years. Went back to Illinois with Chicago, outside Chicago, and then back here to Jacksonville, where her company transferred her back down. So yeah, we've had 2 stops now in Florida, which is great. We're here to stay. Yeah, and set down roots here, hopefully. So.
Well, let me put in a follow-up plug for joining not only the Northeast Florida chapter or the South Florida chapter or the Central Florida chapter, and I'm hoping at some point Warren Rogan from the Central Florida chapter can join us on one of these Zoom meetings, is you join those other chapters, you get connected with those other chapters, you see what they're doing, you participate in their meetings, especially Zoom meetings, which are very easy, obviously, to get engaged. And you learn so much more, and you get to meet other folks who are just as passionate about the game and just as interested and just as knowledgeable. And it is an invaluable opportunity. Highly, highly, highly recommended. I've joined chapters outside the state of Florida, in Michigan, my home state, Chicago, just to get connected with those other groups, because that now more than ever is so essential for us seam heads to stay connected with each other and, and share with each other. Because as,
it's been invaluable.
Yeah. The rest of us have been talking about, we miss the game, obviously. So it's a great way to stay engaged with it. I highly, highly recommend that you go on SABR.org, sign in, and get inside the members section and start looking at what the other chapters are doing, the research chapters, all that, and sign up. There's no restrictions. There's no limitations. There's some guys who are members of every regional chapter, every local chapter.
We just had one join, and I'm like, I was complimented, and I felt like that's great. We got another member from, and he's in every single group.
Yep.
And I told my wife, you thought I was bad.
Yep.
Guy's in every group, because she said, how can you possibly be knowledgeable about all these interests? And I'm like, well, I want to be, because I'm a little butterfly.
Yeah. Yep. And it's polymorph, or whatever these sorts of people are called, who just do everything. And it's, that's what they enjoy. So that, God bless them. More power to them.
She calls me a jack of all trades. Well, she adds something to jack of all trades and a master of, jack, like a donkey of all trades, and a master of none.
I think I've heard that one thrown my direction on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So. Matt, a question.
Sure.
Is the judge on here tonight?
He is not, and he has not tried to chime in yet. He's not tried to log in, that I can tell. Normally, he's a little bit of a late arrival.
Yeah, Well, the reason I ask is, he's retiring or has retired.
Retired, yeah.
And I wanted to applaud him for his great service as a judge. But if he gets in, let me know.
Will do. Yeah, that's our longtime chapter member, Jim Wolf, that Brent is referring to. He was retired now, judge in the First District Court of Appeals for the state of Florida.
Nice.
So,
Good guy.
Yes, very good guy. Very good guy, despite the fact that he is also a fan of a certain team that calls the Bronx home.
Glenn must have gone to sleep.
Glenn has muted himself, which is amazing, and maybe we should
Here we go.
Oh boy! All right, there we go. Okay. Well, it was nice to have the peace and quiet for a while. Oh well.
Yeah.
All right. With that, good little segue there, because I'd like to turn it over to Glenn to give him the balance of this evening's social to go ahead and do what promised to be, having previewed it myself, a pretty darn cool presentation on the glory years of baseball card collecting. So Glenn, per the little plan you and I worked out, I'll run the PowerPoint, and I'll let you go ahead and just take it.
Yeah, let me, I'll just introduce the topic here. My family moved when I was 5 years old out of a little bit west of Chicago down to St. Petersburg, Florida. And basically that's where I grew up. And the Yankees, as you know, trained there back in the 50s. We moved there in 1951. So essentially, I became a Yankee fan. Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra. I mean, it was hard not to type of deal. My dad was a Chicago Cubs fan through and through.
Smart man.
Yeah. He had to have a son who went with the Yankees. He hated the Yankees, So, but anyway, while I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money at all. And so I started collecting cards, I think it was 1955. And I was 9 years old at that point. And essentially, without a lot of money, my family didn't have money to give me. So I had to get money at birthdays or whatever. From somebody, and I would buy cards, and I got pretty good at flipping cards and competing to get cards. For some reason, I was able to accumulate a lot of cards doing that, and then I would trade cards. My objective was basically to get one card of every set I could from 1955 on, and I ran across one kid who had turned, I think he was 14, and he had grown into the girls instead of the cards. And I think I was about 10 years old when I found him. We had all looked for this guy. He was a legend in St. Pete, that he had all these cards. And I found him. I went over to his house and asked him. His name was Big Ollie. I said, Big Ollie, can I see your cards? And me and my buddy, we went to found his house and biked over there. Went into his bedroom. He pulled his cards out from under the bed. And he had all these incredible cards from 1950, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. He was into 55. He hadn't started 55 yet. But by the time we left our time with him, since he didn't care about the cards anymore, he sold them to me. And all I had to my name was $5. And so I got a lot of the cards you're going to see right now are from Big Ollie's collection. And back in those days, again, as you all know who are near my age, the cards got used. So a lot of them are in pretty poor condition generally, but just having them, I'm a passionate baseball fan and baseball card fan. And so I'm what I did here, as I mentioned when we first started this session tonight, is that I've had the time to go back over all my cards. I pulled them, I've taken them everywhere we've ever gone. My wife and I got married. We're into our 54th year. So I was 21, and luckily my mom had not thrown the cards out. My wife and I met at college. So I went to the house when we moved to Tampa from St. Pete. I went to Eckerd College down there is where I met her. And so mom hadn't thrown the cards out, and I was able to capture them, take them with us on the way out to the car to go from St. Petersburg to Marilee's and my apartment in Tampa. I grabbed my cards and covered them up with a little blanket because I was ashamed that I didn't want Marilee to see the cards. So I'm going to the car to put them in the trunk, and she happens to walk out of the back door of our house in St. Pete and sees it and says, "What's that?" And and I was really embarrassed, and I had to think of something to save my integrity as a human and a guy. I said, I didn't want to start the marriage off with a lie, so I said, it's my baseball cards. And she started to laugh, and she said, maybe we are too young to get married. And all I could say to her was, they're going to be worth something someday. I didn't believe that. None of us believed that they were going to be worth anything, but that's all I could say to keep some self-esteem. And lo and behold, they are now worth something these days. But anyway, I'm going to take you through a year by year from 52 on. And it's just, to me, fun because I tried to collect as many different cards as I could. And the different companies and the history of the companies, I'm going to weave a little bit of that into the presentation because it just seems to me pretty neat. And a lot of us will know a lot of it, what I'll talk through, but hopefully it'll still be somewhat interesting. So let's go to the first card.
All right. Let's see. See if it's letting me do the, hang on just a sec, Glenn. Let me make sure that it's going to, let me do this. I'm going to switch something up. Hang on a sec.
Matt Keelan, what year was that? What's the back of his card say?
Wait a second. What you got there? What you got there, Brent?
No, I'm saying, oh, Matt Keelan popped up on my screen. I said, what's the back of his card say?
Yeah, no, that's, I want to make sure. Yeah. Let me see here. Show. All right, hang on.
Anyway, while he's doing that, I just went through my cards and basically pulled out some from each year, and
Funny, look at that.
And we put it together. So this is 1952 Topps, and of course this was Topps' first year. And again, a lot of you will know some of the background, but it was their first year, and they did an artistic rendering of their players, just as Bowman, which had been in business for this was their fifth year, 1952. Bowman had been successful for 5 years, and no card company before that lasted that long. And so they were really doing pretty well as a card company, and Topps decides to join in the competition. And so what Topps does is they come out with a bigger card and with a more colorful backgrounds and basically, having more cards in their set than Bowman had. So they really were quite a competitor their first year out of the box. And so this is, of course, the Warren Spahn card. And this, of course, everybody knows the Mickey Mantle card for 1952 is the one that would be most desirable to own. What happened, and most of us know this, is that Topps company basically had a couple different series, and they had the first series and then the high series. The first series were out there in the summer. It's really loved the Topps cards. They bought them, but as soon as school started in the fall is when Topps went ahead and issued their high series, which included Mickey Mantle. And they didn't send a lot of those high series down south because the demand just kind of dried up. And the stories are that as soon as the kids got in school, they started having a lot of pressure at home not to play with cards and get settled down. And so consequently, Topps got about 500 cases that they started storing because they couldn't sell them. And a lot of those high series cards never came to the South because the South didn't have teams. The demand was particularly bad in the South. So they didn't send a lot of the cards. And that was one reason why I don't know anybody in St. Petersburg that had a 1952 Mickey Mantle high series card. So, but everybody who had these cards really liked them. And so you can see here with the Warren Spahn card, what I put on the commentary here is basically on the back of the card for Warren. So let's go to the second card. And of course, this is Joe. And I thought I wanted to put him in here because I always liked him. I loved his announcing. But you can see from his statistics that he wasn't a top player, so he was more successful as a broadcaster, I guess. But the Mickey Mantle card, I just put in there, the PSA company is, as I think all of you know, grades cards. And so if you really want to sell a card for a reasonably good price, you have to get it graded. They charge about $20 for any card that on the market is worth $500 or less. But as the card's value goes up into the $1,000 range, $1,500 or higher, they get a higher percentage of a commission if they grade. So you have to have money to be able to put down to get the grades. But to be able to sell these cards on eBay, you've got to do that for sure. And you can see here the PSA for the Mickey Mantle for that year, an 8.5 just sold for $1.3 million in auction.
Wow.
And there are 6 cards, according to an article I read the other day, there are 6 cards of Mickey Mantle 1952 tops that are graded PSA 9, and there are 3 cards that are graded PSA 10, because most, like my cards that I have here, they have rounded corners and they've been handled so much that the cardboard itself is starting to break down. So it's not a firm cardboard anymore. It's soft, and so that all gets. There is a problem in the grading when you have that. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, and I have been to this guy's house to see his collection, but a guy in Tallahassee has the most incredible card collection any of us would have ever seen. He's got all the 1950s from 52 up. He's all graded by PSA, the whole set, and he's got the whole set of he's got 2 Mickey Mantle PSA 9s, 2 of the 6, and he's got 1 of the PSA 10s. And this is 1.3 million. The PSA 10 would probably go for at least 2.5 to 3 million.
Who wins in Glenn?
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention it. He doesn't, because he's got the cards at home. He invited me to his house. I got to see them, and he just said, don't broadcast it around because and he keeps them in a vault in his house, and it's amazing, but he has tens of millions of dollars of cards. All his cards are PSA 9s and a couple PSA 8s, and he's converting to PSA 10s as soon as he can. So it's unbelievable. Okay, next slide. So this is the Bowman card, a 1952 Bowman, and of course Bob Feller. And Bowman again had introduced color into their cards, being a major color, and of course Topps copied that when they did their cards for 52 also, but both of them did artwork for their cards. And the 52 cards for Bowman again were smaller and a smaller set, so they weren't quite as popular as the Topps were, but because of the fall and because of the less demand, Topps got hurt. By the way, they didn't throw the cards into the Atlantic Ocean until 1960. They kept them. They kept 500 cases in a warehouse, and they needed a tax write-off. They were going to go in a little bit different direction on cards than they had before. They needed money. They needed space in their warehouse. And so that's the reason they sent the cards out to the sea, was because they took a tax write-off, and they dumped 500 cases. One case, the actual cardboard case without the cards in the case, there's one case left that people know of, and it just sold for $50,000 just for the cardboard case of the 1952 Topps baseball cards. So I've got the 1952 Mickey Mantle, and I'll put this up to my screen so you can see it here. And it's then I sent it in to PSA to get it graded, and it came out a 1.5. But here's the card. This is the true first card of Mickey Mantle. The Bowman card is, I don't know if too much of a glare. Can you see it all right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the 52 Bowman, just as similar to the card as you see with Bob Feller. And this card, again, is graded a 1.5. There's a little crease in it. It's got rounded corners, so it's really been handled a lot back in the day. And this card just sold for $1,300 in this condition, PSA 2. So you can see Mickey Mantle really was the player who got kids interested in baseball cards, and that's when the cards got into we call the modern era of cards. It was Mickey Mantle as he became popular with kids. All of a sudden the hobby really started to take off, and so all his cards, and since I was a Yankee fan in St. Pete, and most everybody in St. Pete was from the Midwest, they all wanted to get rid of their Yankee cards because they hated the Yankees. And so that's how I wound up with hundreds of Yankee cards. And they're all worth something, even in the poor condition. A lot of them are in the pre-19, before I started collecting, these cards are all pretty hard worn by Big Ollie and his friends, you know. So, but I thank Big Ollie every day to have them. Okay, the next one.
Glenn, did you stick the mech in the bicycle spokes?
No, I didn't. No way. Yeah,
People may not remember that, but you can tell them what it is.
I remember. Yeah, we all had our. I used my Commons, Fred, and I had my clothespin, and I put my cards in my spokes, and it was great. I loved that sound.
Oh, wasn't it great? It was. We thought we had a motor.
Yeah.
Hey, Glenn, whatever happened to Big Ollie?
You know, I don't know. I'm sure he's still looking for me if he's alive. He was overweight even back in the day. He was in high school, and I was astounded when I went up to the door and opened it up. It was this huge guy, and he was Big Ollie. But yeah, I don't know if he ever realized what he gave away later on or not. But so, and by the way, stop me and ask questions or make comments if you had any of these cards or any other cards, whatever, when we go through this. Please open it up. I'll keep talking if nobody says anything. But
Well, Glenn, I do have a question. The guy with all the cards in Tallahassee, how come he's not a member of SABR?
He's an interesting dude. He's a very rich guy, and he spends every day on eBay looking for deals on tins now, you know, every day, and through auction. That's all he likes to do. And he's not a real socializing type person. And I never I didn't know him that well, but we met. He came over to my house, saw my collection. He said, "You want to see mine?" And I said, "Oh yeah, man!" And I was blown away. But he doesn't want to get involved with people. You know,
Was he a fan then, or is he a collector?
So is that what DeSantis does during the day?
I don't even know if he watches baseball. I don't know.
Okay, collector.
I got the distinct feeling his focus was on those cards, and that's all. And he, you know, I invited him to go to lunch to talk about cards or talk about stuff. He wanted no part of that. You know, he just cut it off. But you know, so yeah.
Glenn, is he aware of the SABR Baseball Card Committee? Because they have a lot of good information there.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably is. He has been written up in PSA magazines for his collection. I mean, people know about his collection. They just don't know where he lives. But he's probably, I would assume he knows this stuff, but honestly, I don't know. He never allowed a relationship to develop. You know, so I just don't know enough about him past that. But I've seen what he's got, and it's just incredible. Now, this is the 53 Bowman. When they came out the next year, they went from art to color photography. And to me, some of the most beautiful cards are this. I love this year's Bowman cards. And this is, as you see, the Mickey Mantle card. It's a PSA 2, and it's selling for around $600 to $650 right now in this condition. And of course, the first year card, as we all know, is always the most popular and most expensive card, the rookie card, so to speak. But even my 52 Bowman mantle is considered his second card, even though it's not. It's his rookie card. But in the minds of collectors, it's a second card to the Topps 52. And then this will be his third card, basically. And the prices for cards drop dramatically as you go into the out years of a career if you're trying to sell your cards. The condition now, you basically, for the 1950s and 60s into the 60s, maybe early 60s, there's a lot of leeway in purchases. People are willing to pay a lot of money for cards that are worn because there's so few of those cards. The supply is definitely not as great as the demand, so the prices stayed relatively high. And for each of these years, I've got all the Willie Mazes, all the Mickey Mantles, and all the Ted Williams, and in my collections. I don't have full sets of every year, but I got almost full sets from what I got from Big Ollie, as well as what I collected from 1955 to 62 is when I stopped after that year collecting.
Glenn, I have a question on condition.
Yeah.
You take this 53 Bowman card in front of us, and I've been online and looked at, and I don't really know all about how they grade them, but I mean, the rounded edges, I mean, come on, how do you know? And also the border. See, the one border is on this card is wider on one side, and they're
Right.
on the right side wider on the right. I mean, that's just a crapshoot. How do you get them precisely the same? And that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when my son started collecting cards in 1981, I got back into. I had not looked at these cards all year. The cards you're seeing now were in that big filing cabinet that I took out of my bedroom back at my house in St. Pete, and I never basically looked at them again until 1982.
Okay.
Wow.
I loved them. I love these cards. I still do. I haven't sold one of these cards, but I never looked at them until 81 or 82. And Fred, that's when my son started looking. They first came out with a price guide in 1982. And he bought a copy of the price guide somewhere, I don't know, and he came into my house and said, "Dad, you said you had baseball cards, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And so essentially I took the filing cabinet down, put it in his room, and I said, "Have at it, I hope you like them, And well, he started running out from the bedroom because that price guide, he would you see this card and find out that Mickey Mantle, instead of $650 now today, that card sold for probably $56 back in 82, something like that. But he came out, and that was the first time I knew, honestly, in 1982, that these had any value at all, other than the passionate love of the cards. And Fred, when I started looking at the PSA, because what I'm doing now during this virus situation is I'm going through the cards, I'm stripping out the ones that are probably pretty valuable. I will get them graded over time, and told my kids, I said, that's the one thing I'll probably leave you is this PSA graded cards you can sell in a heartbeat.
It seems kind of arbitrary.
They have to be centered to get anywhere near a 10.
Yeah.
Well, this card is off center, as you mentioned. It's not sharp corners. If you felt it, it's kind of soft because it's been held so many times. The cardboard's broken down, so it gets a 2. But there are cards out there, Fred, that are of this card that have sharp corners. People got them, put them into an attic, and never looked at them, never felt them, never did anything. And the printing presses to this day, when they print cards, if Jeff were here, I think he would probably be well aware of this. The printing presses to this day will have a whole set of Michael Jordans, and maybe 3% of the printed cards will be centered and total sharp corners, and centered on the front and centered on the back. So all the borders have to be the PSA comes in with a ruler, and every border has to be exactly the same width. on the front and the back, and then they have all these other criteria that they use, and it's pretty sophisticated. And they use microscopes because a lot of people started doctoring these cards. They see if there was a little chip somewhere in the blue in the background of Mickey here, they would come in and try to find a little bit of paint, and they'd paint it in. And because that's when we started selling cards and they had value, people started doing all this stuff. So PSA has microscopes and exceptional experience. They are the best company. They're the only company that has real credibility in the sale of cards. And so that's why PSA is a company that you kind of have to go to.
Well, thanks, Glenn.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next card. This one is one of my very favorites of all time. I loved this card when I saw it the first time. Pee Wee Reese. This may be, Jim, I don't know. It may be down in Dodgertown because it's a spring training shot, and Bowman was so creative in doing some of their cards like this. I mean, this is the most popular card of that year in terms of interest by most of the collectors. And it's just, to me, I love it. You know? So they were very creative. Bowman was a really good company in terms of producing high quality cards. Okay, the next one.
Glenn, I've been having some fun on the Florida Grapefruit League Twitter site, posting old cards with shots taken at the old spring training sites.
Oh, wow.
I found one in my own collection. It's a St. Louis Cardinals team shot taken at Al Lang Stadium. Found some Harold Baines rookie card from Payne Park in Sarasota. Just some fun stuff like that. I'm going to have to see if I can find a replica of that one and post it as well. Just a screenshot of it, because that was
That's
fun.
neat. Wow.
That's cool.
That's really.
Yeah, Glenn, the last two, Pee Wee and Bronca here, both were here for the Red Barber's funeral at St. John's. They both were in attendance with along with a bunch of other Dodgers.
Wow. Wow. Well, it was interesting with Pee Wee. He was just as we all know, he was very well loved and very much a respectful person of other people. So that's neat.
What year and brand was that again, Glenn? I need to write it down.
That was the 1953 Bowman Company. And you can just Google it and get a picture of it. You know.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yeah, and they also produced a black and white series card, which were all pretty neat too. I don't have as many of these cards as I do of the colored version, but I thought.
Is there value? Is the value similar, Glenn, black and white to the colors or not?
No, it didn't. Okay. They weren't as popular, so there's not as much value to them. But Ralph, pardon me?
Were these cheaper to buy in the store, the black and whites? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I didn't collect in 1953, so I didn't buy any cards until 55. So the only reason I got these was by trading or buying them or flipping for them with people who had them. But I would assume they were. I think at one time they were 5-cent packs, and I think when I was buying them, they were only 5 cents in 1955, if I remember correctly. But I may be wrong on that. But anyway, they were a neat card. So Bowman was, a pretty top player in the game here. So the next one then. And this is my favorite card.
Dan the man.
I love this card. And all the collectors try to get this card because it's considered the best photo of Stan and the best card Stan ever did. And he had an exclusive contract. I think he had won the batting title 3 years in a row by 1953, I think it was. And he had an exclusive contract with Bowman. He didn't sign with Topps. This was his last year, though, of the contract. This was his last card, period, until 1958. for some reason, and I don't know the story behind it, but he had, it was his last year of contract with Bowman, and he says, I don't want a 54 card, and he wouldn't agree to appear on a card until 58. And I'm sure there's a neat story there somewhere, but I don't know what it is. But I love this card. I love Stan Musial.
What a hitter.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah. Okay, next
A lot
card.
of similarities between he and Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, of course, Minnie's card and the 1953 tops was still artwork. It wasn't photos. So, you can see how Bowman was more creative and better as far as I was concerned. But I love the 53 cards by Tops. I mean, I do like the artwork cards. And so these cards were, to me, really, really great. And they have made, the different companies like Tops and other companies have made, and you may have seen them, reprint cards of different years. And the most popular reprint card for Tops that they've done numerous years, they've reprinted. And on the card, it says reprint, but it looks exactly like the year's card that they produced originally. I have a whole set of these 1950, because I love these cards. The 1953 Tops cards are in reprint, and they're gorgeous. I really liked them. They were a very popular card.
What's on his socks?
It looks like a pin of some kind.
Yeah, that's wild. I love the Sox logo.
Looks like he had a pin. I don't know why that would be on there. Yeah, and you notice the background on a lot of these cards. They do take the photos in of these are. This is artwork from photos, but you can see there it's probably a spring training is when the card companies come down, take their photos, get their cards ready to produce immediately, before the season starts. So I always like these cards a lot. So the next one. And this was another company, the Red Man Tobacco Company.
Yeah.
And they produced, as it says here, a set of 52, and they call them the All-Star Collection. And Big Ollie, this was one of Big Ollie's cards, and I've got a number of them. And you can see, if you can notice the pinhole, yeah. Big Ollie I think he loved his cards. A number of them had pinholes in them because he would put them up on his bulletin board in his bedroom. His favorite players and all this kind of stuff. So you can see a lot of kids did that. I did that myself with cards, not all of them, thank God. But this one is pretty rough shape. These are probably worth maybe, $20, something like that. They're not worth a lot of money, even though they're old, especially when they're in this type of shape, so it's not worth a lot.
First year in Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And look at his statistics from the year before. He had more strikeouts, but his record was not as good.
Yeah.
Look at the ERA though, under 3.
Oh yeah, give me under 3, and he's 14-19.
Yeah, he was playing for a pretty bad team. Yeah, it was a pretty bad Braves team, and to have a 2.98 and 14 and 19, he did great.
Yeah.
Was 53 Matthews' rookie year, or was it?
I think
50,
so.
Yeah.
53 or 54.
And then Aaron came right behind him, and away they went.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aaron was about a year behind him. So.
Yep.
First Sports Illustrated cover.
Yep.
Eddie Matthews.
Eddie Matthews, if I remember, I think he was in 52 was his rookie year. 52.
Was it a full season?
So he played in the Boston?
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess he did. I didn't think he did, but
He played in Boston, Milwaukee, and Atlanta.
Well, then that's true.
oh, he's the only 3 guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was part of the high series Tops cards that got thrown in the sea. His rookie card was in there.
Oh, as a Boston Brave.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, nobody has it that I know of, but
Sure.
so yeah, Sharks have got it. Yeah. So. Okay, next card. And then there was another company. A lot of companies, as you remember, the Post cereal and Red Heart dog food, and you would get the label, and you'd send it in with, in this case, 10 cents, and you got 11 of the 33 cards, you know, and this again was in Big Ollie's collection, but they had some great cards. There was they had Mickey Mantle card here with the blue background that's just gorgeous from Red Heart Dog Food, you know. So.
I missed those somehow. They didn't have them in South Dakota.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's just amazing some of the cards that were out there. And so anyway, this is good old Harvey, and you can see there, I thought it was interesting. I loved going through these cards, getting ready to do this, because I hadn't really looked at the back of these cards for a long time. And the fact that this was his rookie year, and he was still a student at the University of Wisconsin. So as soon as the season was over, he went back to school. And I mean, he was a very well-regarded player and an intellectual of sorts, you know. So, and he got his degree, you know. So
ended up back there managing the Brewers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Wasn't
Harvey's
he
Wallbangers.
weird trade
Yep.
too?
Calavito.
Rocky Calavito.
That's right. Yeah.
He
Steak
was
for
the home
ground
run
beef.
champ for the batting average champ, I
Yep.
think, if I remember.
Yeah, that was,
Yep.
wasn't that something when that happened? That was
Yep.
something. Wow.
Steak and
Okay.
for ground beef, trading between the Tigers and the Indians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was incredible.
They did a lot of
Okay,
that.
next card.
Next card.
Okay, there's Pee Wee's card. And as I mentioned, this year, they thought on the back of the card, it talks about this. The 54 rumor was that he was going to be named Dodgers manager. I mean, everybody loved him. All the fans loved him. The players loved him. And I don't know what the situation was managerially back in 54, but they put it on the back of his baseball card that there was a rumor he would be traded or he would be manager. But as we all know, he decided not to, and he played until 1958. He's got a 58 card.
That's when Alston got the
I was
job.
going to say Alston came in, did he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Alston got the job instead of him. Yeah.
Okay. So
Glenn, do
Right.
you have any of the 54 Bowman colored TV cards?
I have the color TV were 55s.
5? Okay.
Yeah, you're going to see it in a second. It's coming. So let's go to the next one there, Matt. Then what Topps did is they came in and they went to photography now, and they not only did one, but they did 2 photos. So you can see the competition factor affecting the cards, both in terms of quality and creativity. No one had ever done this before, where you had 2 photos of a player on a card at the front, you know. And so Willie, this is, you know, Willie's card, and he had not, the back of the card has no statistics on it. He had been in the service in
2 years.
1953, and so all it was a blank stat thing on the back of the card. But they made a card of him anyway, you know, for 54, because he was so
You
popular.
know, Glenn, he also has gone all of 52. Remember, he came up in 51 and gone all of 50. Now, everybody talks about the years Williams missed, and he did miss a lot of prime years. But I always wondered if Mays would have had that 52, 53. You know, he ended up with, 660 home runs,
Yeah.
close to 2,000 ribbies. I mean, I think easily would have hit 70, 80 more home runs, which would have put him way past Babe Ruth, you know, before the Bond stuff.
Yeah.
He was just a phenomenal ball player.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you can see, too, this year, 54 was Aaron and Kaline and Banks' rookie year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've got all their cards. And I just used to sit and go through these cards when I was a kid. I just loved this stuff.
Mays just turned 89 last month.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
Hard to believe how these. I mean, in fact, he's even alive, but it's hard to believe now the age of some of these guys.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think of Willie Mays as being,
No.
you know,
Maybe
think
that's
of his hat
better.
flying off as he's rounded second on the way for a.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Maybe the best all-around player ever.
In my opinion, I agree with you. Just,
Yeah.
and exciting to boot.
Oh gosh, what a
Yeah.
spark! I mean, just unbelievable to watch.
Wonderful ball player. And his card is in the night. Here comes the TV card, Chuck.
Okay.
1955, Bowman. And
Oh, my.
this card is very popular when they do articles on the 1955 set of cards. They often use this card as the example card. It was very popular. The TV format, though, didn't go over real big with the collectors. It was not considered. It was creative, and they had two forms of it in color. They had a blonde wood TV, and then they had this dark wood TV.
I was gonna say the wood paneling just doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the TVs were like that back in the day.
Oh, I know.
They did have that. You know?
But there were no color. None of the games were televised in color yet, though, for what, another 10 years?
Oh no, when the color came out. Let's see, we had the first television set in St. Petersburg. When I was a kid, we moved down there in 1951. My dad had made a television from an electronics kit up in Chicago area where we lived, and we could get television we were in Batavia, Illinois, which was close to Chicago. We could get all the channels on TV. We moved to St. Pete in 51. They didn't know what television was. And literally in 1951, my dad had one of those steel antennas, the ones that came out and they had all the aluminum and stuff. And we had a very small house in St. Pete that we moved to, and he had no place to put the antenna. So he strapped it to the side of the house like everybody would if you had a TV. And it was huge. It went way above the house, and it was huge. It had all these arms sticking out of metal, and people used to line up in front of our house on Sundays after church. We'd have a line of cars go across our front yard, so to speak, on the street, looking at this antenna, and the word on the street was that we were communicating with aliens. They had no idea what this thing was. And within a year, WFSU TV, not FSU, whatever it was down in St. Petersburg, they finally got a station in 1952, end of 1952 into 1953. That's when people first learned about TVs. And then I thought it was about 3 years later when color came out. It was all black and white, but it was somewhere in the 50s, mid 50s that color, I think, came out. My neighbor got one, and we were astounded. I was a little kid.
But my question was, were they broadcasting
like
baseball
60s.
games?
But
Yeah.
First time I saw color television, Glenn, I came back from the Pacific in '68 after a couple of years out there with the Navy. And that was the first time. Now, I'm also from South Dakota, so I don't know. It might have been me, right? But that was the first time I ever saw color television. I'm sure it was out earlier than that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
Well, Detroit had it and WXYZ in 1959.
oh my God.
Color broadcast.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know the color was in the 50s. It came out
Wow.
in the 50s.
Huh.
But yeah, that was stunning when we first saw color television. We couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
1954.
1954.
Tournament of Roses Parade.
There you go. Okay.
It's always good to have a former
Yeah, good Fred.
Wikipedia or whatever.
Well, we also only had one channel, so
There was only 3 sets that could pick it up, but
Well, Bowman left the card business, and Topps bought them, essentially. And Topps brought them back later on in 1988, I think it was. I can't see the thing on here. What's
89.
1989. Topps actually produced some Bowman sets of cards in 1989 just to bring the name back,
Wow.
They owned it. They bought them out. And so that was the last card Bowman ever did, the 1955 TV card. Okay, next one. This is the last one for today. This is Sandy's rookie card. And
Wow.
nice.
it's, you can see it's rated with a 3.5.
Mhm.
And this card, being his rookie card, makes it valuable. This card at a 3.5 would probably, I haven't checked recently, but it should be somewhere around $900 to $1,000
Wow.
for this condition. And so if you had a 10, this card would probably be somewhere around $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. If you had a 10 of almost any of these cards that we've looked at, you've got an enormous return coming, because they were so infrequently at that level of a 10.
Look how young he looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He still looks pretty good for his age, but my God, he looks young there.
Yeah, and it's a great card. And this was the first year Topps came in with horizontal cards, and it proved to be a big hit. And we'll see in the next month when we go into 1957, 56, and 57. The 1956 card is also horizontal. They stayed with that, and then they went back to vertical card in 57. But
Glenn, we're talking about Mays a few minutes ago. Even though Koufax's career was pretty tight, in his great years, I think those 6 years or so, he's probably the best pitcher that ever lived.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I mean, it'd be up for argument, but he was just unbelievable from like 61 through 66 when he retired.
Yeah, well, as it says here, in the 54 year, he was at the University of Cincinnati, and he had incredible stats at the University of Cincinnati. I think one thing I read was, he had 2 games where he struck out 17 batters each in 2 successive games, and he had an incredible 1-loss record in college. So he came out of college with a lot of talent. There's no doubt about it.
And took him 5 or 6 years to kind of find himself in the majors. But
That's right.
65 series, that 2-day rest, 2-0 2-hit shutout over the Twins, just unbelievable. He did it on 2 days off. And
I remember when I did that report on the different pitches that pitchers use, that when he mastered, and I can't remember what it was now, he mastered one of those pitches, slider or something, and that turned him around.
That was a changeup.
Changeup?
I think so.
Yeah, but whatever, I can't remember what it was, but if it was a changeup or whatever, that's when he all of a sudden became spectacular.
Yeah.
So he had a great fastball too. So
Yeah.
So that's basically it, guys. That's gets us through 1955, and next month we'll do 56 through 62. And so that
Great job, Glenn.
great.
So, Glenn, Sandy Koufax was at University of Cincinnati in 1954.
Yeah.
I just looked up Oscar Robertson started in 1957.
Ah. Man, they produced some talent in that school.
And with the Big O, they never won the national title, and he left, and they won it the next year. Isn't that funny how those?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
With Hogue and Bonham and that group of guys, 60, 61.
God. Wow. Well.
That's great, Glenn.
Cool. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, I'm glad you got a chance to relive some of the memories there. So.
Nice. Yeah, putting together the PowerPoint presentation with Glenn was like the next best thing to actually getting the cards out and flipping through them myself and looking.
Real.
So,
Yeah.
because of course I own none of these, but
What, he did make a deal to do this presentation?
Really?
no, I cut no deal. I did nothing of the sort. So.
Well, what I'm going to do when we get back together again is like I said, I'm going through all these cards, and I'm going to try to make a set for however many of us show up to our first meeting. I'm going to give you all a set of each of these cards for each of these years. So you can throw them away when you get home if you want, but you'll have one of each of the cards that you will see during the entire presentation. You'll have one of each for that year. Yeah, just so you can have it. And just if you have grandkids or whatever, you can say, here's what the old cards looked like, something like that. So
Make mine catchers.
Or Pokerola, whatever his name is.
He's got that Garagiola one just waiting for you there, Cap.
Yeah. Yeah, a few of the really good ones I'll probably keep for slabbing them with the PSA, but I'm going to go ahead and distribute them so somebody else can enjoy these things. So I hope you'll like them.
Cool.
You were talking about Garagiola as an announcer. One of my earliest memories of him was he used to be on the Today Show,
Mhm.
and he did the sports. And in 1973, the Mets won the National League East by like a half a game. It came down to the last day of the season. And I would have been 11 years old then, and I would get up every morning before I went to school to hear the scores and the reports from Joe Garagiola on the Today Show with my mom, who was an old Brooklyn Dodgers fan.
Yeah. Wow.
You know,
Nice.
talking about Joe and the announcing, I've been watching a fair number of games on MLB, you know, the all-time games or whatever they're calling them. And it's interesting to, you remember the superstars, but you know, the everyday players, and you see them again and you go, oh my God, I've completely forgotten about that guy. But then there's the announcers, you know, and it's like, oh, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I'm not that happy to be listening to Tim McCarver again, but you know, it's
Good
just,
catcher, yeah.
yeah, well, good catch.
Good, yeah.
I saw one
Scully.
the other day with Howard Cosell and Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
On a baseball game?
An old Yankees Dodgers World Series game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
They were Monday Night Baseball on ABC. They were when ABC had the contract for the series in 77, 78. Those were your announcers. I remember those.
Scully and Ernie Harwell and Matt, you'll know this name, Herb Carneal were probably my
Yep.
three favorites.
Yep, Herb Carneal is, if you haven't heard an old Twins broadcast when he did the Twins games before he passed, man, he was fantastic. He was number two
And
to
a great-
Ernie Harwell for me growing up.
Yeah.
That's how highly regarded I hold Herb Carneal.
Yeah, I do too. And
And I only got to hear him towards the end of his career in the early 90s, but he was fantastic.
How about Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese?
Yeah.
English teachers got on because you know, old Dizzy couldn't pronounce it. He had terrible grammar.
Yeah.
He slid into third base, you know.
Yeah.
and for contemporaries, I've always liked Al Michaels too, but he hadn't done baseball now for quite a while, I don't
Yeah, he's
think.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he cut his teeth on doing Reds games. I think he preceded Marty Brenneman doing Reds games, play-by-play. That's how he got his start.
He was a college student doing college radio games of Arizona State with Reggie and Bando, and that whole crew was out there at
Really?
Arizona State.
Wow.
Yeah, those were teams that did do quite well in Omaha.
Yeah.
Nice.
Bobby Winkles.
Yes. Thank you, Glenn. Much appreciated. Look forward to the second half, the sequel,
Sure.
56 to 62.
Yep.
And that is a little bit of a segue into the final thing I just wanted to address before we all bid adieu. For the next couple months, I think, just because of the uncertainty that's out there and everything, I think that it seems wisest to keep our socials in this format, virtually via Zoom. And we'll just see how things evolve. And maybe with a little bit of luck, we might be able to do the social distancing social come, I don't know, September, October, but we have to be mindful of what potentially could be happening as the weather gets colder and so forth. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think for now, if everyone's okay with it, we'll keep the format this way and
Oh yeah.
virtually.
Good.
I'm good for it. Yeah.
All right.
We need to be safe, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And this is still proving to be a pretty successful format in terms of being able not only to share with us each other locally, but able to include other folks.
Yeah, it's really great to have everybody
Sam,
come in.
Tim,
Yeah.
guys who
It's
haven't
been
able
neat to have.
to-
It's been neat to have the out-of-town company. And you said Billy's been with us before.
Yeah, Billy used to be able to make the socials. He's been able to make SABR Day in America in the past, but Wednesdays were getting tough for him to be able to manage. But this gave him the opportunity to join us, and so I think that's
Yeah, good to see you, Billy.
Great.
yes, it's nice to have a Mets fan to balance out some of that Yankees stuff. I guess.
Well, SABR is definitely not having their convention, right? The conference
Right.
is
Next year.
Correct. As far as I
Same
know,
time,
they're
same place, but a year
Yeah.
from
Same
now,
spot,
right?
yeah.
just about the same dates, close-ish. But
okay.
Who's
Let's
the
go for a year.
other? Who's the other long-suffering Mets fan? Billy.
that would be Billy.
Yes, that's
Oh.
me.
Good to meet you.
Billy's in Tallahassee, right?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, it was nice to hear from our guests from Jacksonville too. And I think, didn't I see, I'm getting a split screen here with 3 or 4 guys, but
Yes.
I think I've seen our friend from Miami here too tonight,
Yep,
right?
Sam's there.
Good.
Yeah. And thank you, Matt, for putting this together. This is really wonderful and getting to meet all the guys. It's great.
Oh, my pleasure. Our pleasure. Happy to do it. This is-
Great to have you, Sam.
Yep.
Thank you.
This is what this format should be all about.
Thanks for letting me join too.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's real helpful. It's been helpful for us, and has utility elsewhere. But it's the only thing we know. So what do I know? But so we're excited. It's the only toy we have. So we're doing our first, venture out into the real world. But we had to keep it under 10. They said in the meeting room that they have for us. They said they could space out max of 10.
oh,
And be within 6 feet of each other. I mean, I can get, my wife's in our group, so I could get within 6 feet of her, I believe, without getting arrested, or maybe not. I don't know. We're going to try it. But they said they can accommodate a group of 10 and see how it goes.
Well, they bumped the groups to 50 now today, starting Friday. You can go to bars
Yeah.
and basically restaurants are, a lot more people can come in.
Good.
Yeah.
hey, you won't see
Everybody
me
behaves.
inside one for a while, but I don't
Yeah,
mind.
me either.
Yeah.
I won't be there.
We go.
Yeah. I think we'll keep it like this because I think this works pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
safe.
Things.
Good.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, anything else for the good of the order?
Thanks, guys.
I just have one thing. I don't know if I sent out an email about a movie I watched recently called The English Game. I don't know if anybody get to watch it, but I'm a
Oh.
baseball antiquities guy. I like the origins and the social changes that were reflected in the development of the game. You get a chance to watch it. It's about the development of soccer, the association football,
Mhm.
and it's almost eerie, the parallels between baseball and soccer. Almost
The class. It was the class structure. That was pretty interesting.
Did you see the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, one
It was basically just like,
yeah.
but it was basically baseball's early, where it was, the rich, the well-off basically
Okay.
ran the sport.
Exactly. Yeah, the Elysian Field and the Atlantics and the Knickerbockers and all that. Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. Anyway, just a recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, keep the good humor coming too.
Oh, I'll try to do that. I get
Okay,
some
good.
stuff now.
Righty.
And
Excellent.
Kent, keep the pictures coming on Sunday. I enjoy it.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, our photographer extraordinaire.
absolutely. Thank you, Ken.
Not just a top flight documentarian, but a top flight photographer as well.
Hey, can I ask a quick question here to Nick? Nick, dude, what's the deal on any spring training down in Florida?
I've reached out to all of the facilities, and some of them are either holding the cards close to the vest and not saying anything. Some of them, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, said that they're going to stay in Pittsburgh. That's one of the options, that the teams stay in their home markets to train. I've been following it in the media. Some of them are saying there might be some people in Florida. There might be some people in the home cities. I've got a list going right now, and none of them have really said that they're going to return to Florida for what might be 2 to 3 weeks. All of them have said that I think the Washington Nationals said they would come back to Florida. And they said the facility would not be open to the public. They can have it set up so the players can come directly out of the clubhouse, and they can close off the gates to the public and into the facility. So
would they have inter-squad competition just to get ready for the season?
yeah,
That's it.
Yeah. Mm.
I
Well,
doubt
let's
travel between the parks.
Mhm.
there's still nothing really solid yet. If they're looking at a July 1st, July 4th start date, which is what's being thrown around, the date that teams would start their spring training is what I've seen is June 10th, which now is what, a week away?
One
Good luck.
week.
And our next meeting's on July 1st, so one way or the other, we're gonna know we got a season.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thanks, Nick.
Yeah. See you next month, guys.
All right, gentlemen.
Good night.
Thank you,
Bye,
Matt.
everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Thanks,
Good night,
Matt.
John Boy.